Vince McMahon was left with no option but to fire his son Shane. Plans were recently changed involving not only Roman Reigns, not only Brock Lesnar, but Paul Heyman as well. And finally, we have an update on the likelihood of Keith Lee possibly appearing in AEW. More on that in just a sec. So yes, Andrew, first of all, Vince McMahon, according to Dave Meltzer, left with no choice but to fire Shane. Obviously, as we and many other people have been talking about the past few days, since the Royal Rumble really, Shane McMahon was let go from WWE by his dad. And now Meltzer's saying that Vince was left with no choice but to fire Shane. Isn't that correct?
No chance in hell. That is correct. That is correct. Meltzer says, every single story you've already heard, multiplied many times over, was said by one person close to the situation. He was unprofessional, the likes of which left Vincent Kennedy McMahon no option but to fire him. Wow. You go first.
I was just going to go, wow, well.
Wow, well.
Well, yeah, Meltzer did elaborate a little bit as well. Some of the things are things we've already heard from other news sources, such as Ringside News and Fightful. Some things Meltzer elaborated on slightly more as well, so I'll just summarise everything that he said. But basically, some of this you may well have heard before, but other sources of Meltzer's noted that Shane wanted to build the ending of the Royal Rumble match around himself and be a featured player in the match, and apparently was visibly very unhappy when his ideas were shot down by Vince, and as has been reported, was not professional with James Gibson, aka former superstar Jamie Noble, former Ring of Honor world champion Jamie Noble, and talked down to people as well, apparently Shane did. Apparently, there were also disagreements specifically regarding Shane and Lesnar in the closing stages of the match. Now, Lesnar's kind of got not like official creative control, but more sway than others when it comes to planning matches. So that would have caused some friction, I guess, as well, if Shane was like, well, I want a batter thoo. As they say in Yorkshire.
As they do.
And Lesnar's like, oh, right, then, mate. Now, I remember earlier on this week, Meltzer saying that Shane, it was just worded really funny. It was like, Shane was willing to put Lesnar over. So like, oh, well, that's very good
well
of you.
done, Shane.
But yeah, apparently this led to, obviously, a lot of heat, as has been reported on Shane backstage. A lot of friction between Shane's ideas, what Lesnar wanted to do, and also what Vince wanted to do. Just lots of things clashing. That led to plans constantly changing all day. Vince overruling Shane on his ideas, and also agreeing largely with Lesnar, according to Meltzer as well. And basically, I read as well that this led to the producers being so confused because they'd have Vince telling them one thing from on high, and then Shane and then they were just trying to get Vince's message to go into the match, and then Shane would be going, no, don't worry about it. I imagine for the production team and for the producers of the match itself, it sounds like a nightmare.
Absolutely, and also as we've already said throughout the week, the performers as well, bless them, because they'll have had so many spots planned and everything. Things will have been told to them, and then all of a sudden for Shane McMahon to come in and say, actually no, we'll swap it this way and whatnot, when that might not have been okayed by Vince already. Like, I can't even imagine the absolute S show that would have been going on backstage at Royal Rumble. There
was some confusion as well over whether Shane was actually a producer on the match or not, because his name wasn't listed. Jamie Noble or James Gibson seemed to be very much the head agent for the Royal Rumble, but it seems as though people have various news sources kind of ironed out what happened, and his name wasn't listed because he was kind of an unofficial producer. Vince kind of dropped him on it and went like, because Shane had helped out the past 2 years, but apparently was nowhere near as abrasive or as difficult as he reportedly was this year. Vince apparently no choice but to fire Shane.
Wow.
And Shane wanted it to be all about him.
He did indeed.
Moving on now, looking ahead slightly to WrestleMania 38. In The Observer, it has also been reported that Vince McMahon is leaning towards what, Andrew?
Oh my goodness.
Cheeky little story here.
Leaning towards a title versus title on the guise of making this the biggest possible match, which currently is the key goal for WrestleMania.
So that's title versus title, Reigns and Lesnar. But Lesnar's just lost his title, so he'd have to win it back.
He'd have to get it back, and
he
then
is in the chamber.
Bobby Lashley with another short reign.
Well, I don't agree with this idea.
Me neither.
If it is true, I think it's a bad idea because, it's putting all your eggs in one basket slightly, I think.
I agree. Now, I was thinking about this as well. I was like, okay, if it's title for title, fair enough. If someone's holding two titles, will that make the US title and the Intercontinental title feel a little bit more special now?
In theory,
in theory, but
in practice,
I don't know if that would actually be the case. And I don't think I like the idea of having either Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar hold both titles either.
It seems a bit needless.
It does seem very needless when that shot could be going to somebody else. As well,
I mean, if you go, there's a huge difference between, say, like, I don't know, Bobby Lashley versus like AJ Styles or Big E or somebody with or without the title. Because without a title at stake, even if they build a great storyline around it, it's going to be the match that should have been for a title.
Yes,
exactly. That's how people will view it once WrestleMania comes around, because there has been a title on Raw, and it has, but it's not just been the Roman Reigns story.
Exactly.
So as fantastic as Roman's been, but I think if this is true, as the Observer reports, I think it is a bad shout.
Me too.
I'll say. But yeah, apparently Heyman and Lesnar are pushing for it, and apparently WrestleMania. Vince, is leaning towards making that WrestleMania main event for both titles. He's leaning in the direction of it. Nothing confirmed yet, of course, but that would mean that whatever the planned WWE title match is, well, that would have to be changed or scrapped, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've heard a lot of things as well, sort of surrounding the Royal Rumble and surrounding the Reigns and Rollins thing as well, to keep Reigns looking strong, keep Seth looking strong and whatnot. It very much feels like they are building everything for WrestleMania around this feud, the Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns thing.
And it is a huge feud.
It is.
But we've seen WrestleManias before, good ones, with multiple huge feuds.
We have, that's very true.
I'm thinking of like 24, had loads of huge feuds, 30, 31. I mean, there doesn't need to just be one story going on.
And that's the thing as well, like, I guess, and it's the same in AEW, I guess, too, to compare. Obviously, we had the Kenny Omega and Hangman huge feud going on and everything as well, but there was so much other stuff built
of course,
around, away from that, too, that
Punk
was exciting.
Kingston,
exactly. We don't necessarily need it to be just this one thing.
No. Apparently, WWE want to book Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar as strong as possible, which feeds into this story or plays into the story of it making it title versus title.
Yeah.
Again, according to Meltzer, the idea is to book Reigns and Lesnar as strong as possible, with the idea that the Mania match is the two top stars who are well above everyone else. Like, why is that good?
Wow.
And the Mania main event is a dream match. It's needed because they've wrestled so many times before at the last Saudi Arabia show, including that match, and also they were meant to wrestle at day one as well.
Yes.
Now, I agree that they've wrestled a lot before. They've main evented WrestleMania twice already together.
I think so,
31, 34. That might be it. But it's still another 3 is quite a lot.
It is, isn't it? And this one feels like the most exciting one, the one that's had the most satisfying build, I think. To it. Even though a lot of things have kind of just happened on the fly because, say, Roman Reigns day one couldn't be there because of COVID and everything. Things have been built quite quickly, I guess, at the same time, but I think there's a little bit more weight to it than there was perhaps before.
Yes, I don't think there needs to be title versus title to be a huge match.
No, exactly.
Roman's reign has been so strong, and Lesnar's always strong, so it doesn't need to be title versus title.
It doesn't.
But I do think that I agree with you in that this would still be... I mean, if it was Lesnar versus Reigns, I wouldn't be like really thrilled for it because we have seen it a lot of times before. But I'd be more excited than I was for 34 when it was Reigns versus Lesnar, which had a worse build. So.
I think it's like the character building they've been doing for Roman Reigns, obviously, that makes this really compelling, and for Brock Lesnar too, who's come back and just crushed it, I think, since being back.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of Roman and Lesnar, Paul Heyman apparently wasn't originally booked to portray Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. It wasn't the original plan for Heyman to turn on Lesnar and go with Reigns, but the expectation was apparently that it was Lesnar not full-time, and the Reigns and Heyman dynamic being so strong and so successful that they would eventually get back together. It's just the way they did it wasn't always the plan, apparently. So I think Meltzer's suggesting here that it may have happened at day one, but obviously Reigns got COVID, he had to isolate during the show. But the idea of Heyman getting back with Reigns is to help make Reigns as much of a heel as possible to play off against Lesnar being as much of a face as possible, which I don't think he has been particularly. I mean, you can't make Lesnar like a smiling high five.
Hey guys.
Hey.
I completely agree with you again. I guess this is sort of an example of some things within this storyline feeling slightly rushed.
Yes.
I think, and as you were saying, it's hard to make Brock Lesnar a super baby face.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's coming off that way just with his demeanour and how he's acting in the ring and everything, being a little bit more himself, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously they seem to be something that needed to happen at Royal Rumble to lead to Brock Lesnar becoming a babyface, and obviously the ending of the Rollins and Reigns match, you know, to get that heel heat.
Well,
yeah.
But I thought you were going to say the Lashley and Lesnar match, which I think the ending worked as well.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, both of them was kind of screwy finishes, but or like not satisfying finishes, but it built towards something. The only thing is with that Lesnar and Lashley one, what was the point if they've changed their mind now? They're going to take the title back off Lashley.
That's the thing. That's going to be a little bit strange.
Strange, very strange.
We will
indeed.
See.
But I mean, now after this news has come out, you've got to assume that Lesnar is the favourite for that Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, you'd think so.
I think there's ways in Elimination Chamber to have maybe not one of the stronger guys win, because you could have Lesnar like crash out of the pod or something.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
You know, not be pinned. You could have him be incapacitated in some way.
Just do a Shawn Michaels and have the Usos or something pop up out of the ring and get Lesnar out of there somehow.
In cowboy boots.
Yeah, in cowboy boots. Yeah.
And finally, stepping away from WWE, but talking about a former WWE superstar, we're going to talk about Keith Lee. Because the Observer are reporting that apparently Keith Lee is a name, one of a few names being bandied about as someone who AEW could sign. I don't think that's too much of a surprise.
No, I don't think so.
He's one of the hottest free agents out there.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely going to have to be some talks between Tony Khan and Keith Lee somewhere, right? Like, I think AEW would be a great fit for him too, because there's lots of big guys in there that do lots of athletic things as well, not just monster stuff, you know. You've got Lance Archer in there, for example.
Absolutely.
Like, he'd just be Miro as well, Just, I think this would be a wonderful fit for the man we cannot ever forget about.
As well. And in AEW, it seems as though superstars, wrestlers, are a little bit more free to show certain aspects of their real personality or their own. They've got a little bit more creative freedom with their characters, it feels like. And Keith Lee, if anyone was familiar with him on the Indies or even in NXT when it was like black and gold NXT, he's a really charismatic guy.
Absolutely.
And they for some reason stifled that on the main roster.
Just stripped him of that a little bit, didn't they? Just made him sort of one note, flat.
Strange
and that's such a strange thing to do to someone who is the whole package.
Yeah. I read this bit of The Observer, and they were talking in it about how Keith Lee, when he signed for WWE, was 33. Now he's 37. And even though it's not that big an age difference, could be like a crucial time when your body starts to maybe slow down a little bit more. And it was specified like for a guy of his size who's his whole thing's built around being huge but also being like so athletic and quick and able to do things that other people, maybe other big imposing wrestlers can't do. And then maybe if he starts to slow down, he wouldn't be as big an asset to AEW. But I've got to disagree. I think that he doesn't need to go 100 miles an hour. It's not like when he was in PWG.
Yeah.
But he can still very much wrestle a fantastic match.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you there.
Love Keith. Don't forget about him, guys.
Good boy.
That wasn't obviously
like he was a dog then when I did that. Oh, good boy.
Oh, right.
Good boy. Sorry.
Very patronising.
That wasn't it? I didn't mean that. He is incredible.
Yes, he is, of course. That isn't confirmation, of course, by the way, that he's going to definitely sign for AEW or anything. But apparently his name is being talked about. So that's very encouraging news.
Yes.
Of course, we want the best for Keith. He is phenomenal. Thank you very much for watching this news video. If you missed out some of our earlier news updates, do check the channel. They are already out on the channel. And said channel twice in the same inflection. It felt weird. It felt a bit weird there. Leave your thoughts on any of these stories in that comment section down below. I've been Jack. This has been Andrew. And have a great weekend, guys. Have a great one. And we'll see you very soon.